Greetings to you all in the most precious name of our soon coming Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Thank you for tuning into this video where we are continuing to study the Gospel of Mark. In today's video, we will look at Mark chapter 9, verse 30 to 37 and 10, verse 13 to 16. Its parallel passages are found in Matthew 18, verse 1 to 5 and Luke's Gospel chapter 9, verse 44 to 48. As we combine these three passages, we understand that Jesus is getting very clear about the rejection that he will face and the death that he will go through. He makes it clear to his disciples that he has not come as the political Messiah. Rather, he came as the suffering servant or the Messiah who will die for the sins of mankind. However, we understand that the disciples are still thinking about the kingdom of heaven as political in nature. And in this section, we will see how differently Jesus answers to these expectations and desires of the disciples when it comes to greatness. Look at the disciples. They were arguing in the way and they kept silent when they were asked regarding the discussion that they had. They were arguing on who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Since they knew that Jesus would be the king, they wanted a high position in the political kingdom. They didn't realize that the kingdom of heaven was more of an acceptance with God in a faith-based relationship rather than a political one. And the disciples asked, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" From this point, Jesus will use a child to elaborate 3 points as a response to what the disciples had asked and what they needed to know. In Matthew 18, verse 1 to 5, we understand that Jesus tells them like this: greatness is not the primary concern. The first thing that the disciples should actually think about or be aware about is whether they are in the kingdom of heaven or not. If they are not in the kingdom of heaven, then there is no point discussing about the greatness in the kingdom of heaven. In entering the kingdom of heaven, what is the comparison of the child in here? Jesus says, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So we ask the question, turn from what? Turn from the problem of sin, which is the root cause of the ambition of being the greatest. They wanted to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and it is because there was a thought in themselves that there was something good in them, or that they were superior. And they thought themselves as worthy of being in God's kingdom. In short, turn from the problem of sin, from the root problem of sin. Turn from the idea that we are qualified to be in God's presence. Turn from the idea that we are sufficient in ourselves. Turn from the pride that makes us think that we are something. And number 5, turn from the ambition to become great and that which causes others' downfall. So they have to turn from all of these things. And they must become like children. Now, in what sense are they supposed to become like children? As we know, children depend on others for everything they go through. They are incapable of helping themselves out. They can't take care of themselves or feed themselves. They always express their inability in things to those who are older than them. In short, the humility expressed in a child consists of the trust in the parent and asking in the need for help. This is totally opposite to what the disciples have been expressing up to this point. So the primary concern is a relationship with God. To strive for greatness in God's kingdom when you don't have a relationship with God is a futile exercise. To enter into a relationship with God, We cannot come to God by cherishing our sinfulness. We admit that we are helpless in ourselves, unable to stand qualified before God. We need to admit about this fact that we on our own are helpless and that we can't do anything that gives us acceptance before God. He has to accept us with a requirement that He can be satisfied with and only what He can give us. And that's Jesus' righteousness, which provides our forgiveness. So, in summary, I want to encourage all of my listeners to come to God with a childlike dependence, not trusting in ourselves for a moment and having a false assumption about our credentials before God. The second thing that we find as a conversation in here is that after Jesus has finished talking about entering God's kingdom, he answers the topic that the disciples were discussing until now: greatness in the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus' statement on that topic goes like this. And this is how Mark records it. If anyone would be first, he must be the last of all and the servant of all. And Matthew records it like this: whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So the disciples' pursuit of greatness is driven by selfish ambition and vain glory. They wanted service from others. They wanted power so that they could put others as a stepping stone for success or greatness. So, this is greatness motivated by selfishness and glory and attention from others. Jesus is going to redefine kingdom greatness that the disciples were seeking after. Desiring greatness is not a bad thing. Jesus doesn't condemn them for desiring greatness. What Jesus says, that is, if anyone seeks greatness and primeness in God's kingdom, he must be the last of all and the servant of all. He must be willing to be unseen and regarded as a servant of all. This greatness that Jesus is talking about is one in which one leader gives himself to service to others instead of being a recipient of service. He is a giver of service than a recipient of service. Rather than standing in front in order to be seen by others, he chooses to stay away from the limelight, turning the spotlight to others. This is servant leadership, giving of service, no selfish attention or ambition. Again, we see Jesus including a child as an illustration to explain true greatness. How can a person show servant leadership and be willing to be the last of all? Only when they have the humility that is expressed in a child. In fact, the same humility that one has in understanding his position of helplessness in entering God's kingdom continues in his life, and that childlike humility, it's still there. So in summary, only when a childlike humility is there, we have a mind that values others more than oneself. When there is such a mind, a person does not hesitate being regarded as last of all and a servant of all, in contrast to being regarded as the first of all and the master of all. Anyone who looks at greatness with values like these exhibit kingdom greatness. The other greatness that the disciples are seeking after and what they are expressing, that is opposed to this, and it is not from God. It is a devilish sort of greatness. The point here is that one needs to be humble to get into a relationship with God, and that humility pours out into the attitude and approach towards greatness. Now we come to the third point. Jesus goes on to give the evidence of the kingdom of heaven using this child. He says, whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and those who receive me receive not only me, but him who sent me. Why is Jesus connecting receiving a child with receiving Jesus? And what is so special in a child? In the times of Jesus, the Judaism of that time never allowed a child who was under 12 years old to be taught the Torah. No one would spend time with a child that is less than 12 years old, and they would think of it as a waste of time, as an unimportant effort in life. Because children take, they don't give. Children demand attention, they don't give attention. Children were the neglected part of the society at that time. This is why Jesus is using this as a comparison to the point that he is trying to make. So, having said all of this, we must keep in mind that Jesus is not promoting a work based salvation. He is not saying that receiving a child in his name gets Jesus and through that the Father. Examining the other passages in the Bible regarding salvation, we know that salvation is by grace through faith, and that salvation will manifest itself in good works. So why is Jesus making this sort of a statement here? A parallel statement. Whoever receives such a child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not only me, but him who sent me. Jesus is giving an evidence of a person who has received Jesus and the Father in an eternal relationship. Now, in this scenario, Jesus is not restricting this evidence of internal relationship with God using a child or using just a child. In this scenario, a child is a sample or a representation of the set of people in society that were neglected or considered unimportant. Those who have no benefit to the society, those with whom there is no use being with, widows, orphans, children, and so on. These were the neglected part of the society in those days, and people didn't find it useful to spend time with such people. Now, coming back to the topic here, the evidence of someone who is in a relationship with Jesus and the Father is that he or she welcomes and regards as important those who are considered unimportant and useless by the society. He treats them with love. He or she treats them with love. So, in other words, let me just repeat it out. If someone has to show, or if someone has to be identified as somebody who is in a relationship with Jesus and the Father, one evidence for the relationship with the Father and with the Son is that they will treat somebody who is considered unimportant by the society with importance. They will treat that person with love and regard. Jesus himself showed an example over here. He gives importance to a child that most people neglected. As we look in Mark 10, verse 13 to 16, we see that Jesus finds time to spend with children and bless them and take them in his arms. When the disciples are rebuking the children and their parents in that instance, Jesus was very angry at them. He was indignant at them, and he spent time with children. So Jesus was approachable by children. Further proof lies in the fact that we humans don't contribute anything to God except the salvation, except the sin that we made it necessary. That is what we need to keep in mind here. As we look at Jesus, there is nothing that we contribute to the glory of Jesus. We don't contribute anything to God except the salvation that we have received, except the sin that we had, which made salvation necessary for us. So basically, There is nothing in us that is so attractive, just like how the Jewish society viewed children and other similar sections of society in those days. In spite of our uselessness, Jesus considers our need of salvation important, and Jesus, who knows that we are basically not good, he chooses to interact with us and offer us salvation. If someone is in a relationship with Jesus and the Father by grace through faith, he will evidence or he will give evidence of that relationship with God by imitating the God that he is related to. Just like God relates to us, fully knowing that we are of no use to him on our own. In that same way, we will also show regard and treat with love those who are considered unimportant in society. Here we see some lessons and applications. So, lesson number one goes like this: we as sinners need to acknowledge and accept the fact that we cannot help ourselves in order to have a relationship with God. We need to have a childlike humility, completely depending on God to qualify us to be His children. The second lesson that I would want to leave for all of us: this humility that we have in our salvation, it affects our pursuit of greatness. Christ's definition of greatness is opposite to the world. That's the servant leadership that we are talking about. That is what Christ advocates. The third thing that we want to learn from this passage is with regard to how we treat those who are unimportant or not beneficial to us. How do we treat them in any way? Let me just give you an application. How do you treat somebody who is working below you in your office? How do you treat a peon or a sweeper who is working in your office? How do you treat somebody who serves as a waiter in the restaurant that you go to dine? How do you treat somebody who is very much in need of help, who only knows how to receive help, who doesn't know how to give help? How do you treat such people? We know that they might not be of any help to us, and we know that when we get angry at them, they won't respond to us. So, how do we respond to them, or how do we treat them? How we treat people below our status shows the reality of the salvation that we have. If you are abusive or if you are uncaring to those who are below you in status, be assured that you don't have a relationship with God. That's a fact. It's a plain fact. So think about these things and check on your life, retrospect your life. Is your relationship with God really valid? Do you really have a relationship with God? It will be seen in the way you approach greatness, and it will be seen in the way you treat those who are below you. So think about these things, and may God's name be glorified. Amen.